I'd like to call to order the October 25th meeting of the Monona City Council Committee of the Whole. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Kuhr?
Here.
Alder Holmquist will be late. Alder Spate?
Here.
Alder Wood is excused. Alder Kitzlar?
Here.
Alder Moore?
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the October 12th Committee of the Whole meeting?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? I did notice that it mentioned the new firefighter would be $68,000. It should be $86,000.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I tell you the wrong number.
Maybe it could have just been a transposition.
No, I've always heard 68. Okay.
Okay, anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we will move on to item D, council review of the 2018 operating budget. First up is Sonia Kriesel with the Planning and Community Development Authority. Sonny?
Yeah, if you can do planning first, page 95. Get this.
There are, outside of all of the personnel accounts, there are only two changes. Under supplies, it was increased $100 to a grand total of $700, just based on past use. And then under outside services, we proposed $15,000 to hire a consultant to rewrite our sign code. This has been a Plan Commission priority for many years and is really badly needed. Our sign code alone is just terribly organized and has a whole lot of errors in it, but now it's also very, a lot of the just regulations need to be updated due to a 2015 Supreme Court case. So
I'm sorry to interrupt. Will, we don't have any thing on the screens here? I'm sorry.
No problem. So hiring a consultant, I think Vanderwall and Associates, for example, provided this quote for $15,000, and they've already updated Oregon sign code for this 2015 Supreme Court case and can just do it more efficiently. And I think it'll save time for myself as well as the city attorney, who would spend a lot of time reviewing that.
Just so you know, the health insurance is the increase from Sonny deciding to get married. So,
And were we going to take the 15,000? Is that coming out of?
yes, I forget. Yep. So the 15,000 is a fund, one of the fund balances numbers we were using it for.
Chad?
So, just want to ask about that, the sign ordinance. Wouldn't that be pretty much a boilerplate thing? I mean, how unique are the ordinances in Monona compared to other municipalities in the area?
It can be very boilerplate. I don't know the exact answer to the question, how different they all are.
Right.
Things
I guess,
that, yeah.
it's really, I guess, a question for this vendor, but it just seems as though that's a lot of money to pay for something that we can probably just, I hate to use the word plagiarize, but, we're not all writing our own unique ordinances, and we're talking about the regulations, the basic rules for street signs, and so it just seems like a lot of money for something that's probably fairly standardized. And if another community has just had recent revisions, might we look at some way to, cost share with them in arrears or something, as opposed to just paying
Right.
in full for this to be remade. I just, it's something for us to maybe consider moving forward. We haven't hired them yet. have
Correct, we have not.
we? Yeah.
So when I got the quote from them, it was $9,000 to $15,000, $15,000 being a complete rewrite, which I think we need. And another benefit of hiring the consultant, things in the sign code that make it much easier to administer are like the consultant's ability to draw diagrams and have them appropriately incorporated into the code more than the software that we have the capability to do, and also their GIS ability to, redo the maps for sign districts and things like that. And I think just the conversation with the Plan Commission, we want to make it as easy as possible. We have trouble with some signs in the city, like our multi-tenant buildings, and I think having the consultant's expertise on that will be helpful.
This is more than just street signs, correct?
It's all commercial
Anything
properties
you
as well as
approve.
residential signs, and how I think there are a lot of really tricky issues for free speech and things like that. And when you're looking at campaign signs on residential property and other temporary signs throughout the city, I think we want to make sure that we're doing that right and it's written in a really clear way. I think they can do that really efficiently.
Okay. I mean, if that's what it's going to take to do it right, then I wouldn't be against it. But it just strikes me as a high number for something that
Okay.
seems like you do it again and again.
Sonia?
Nancy?
This is Nancy. Is the Supreme Court case that you referenced related to the First Amendment and political speech, or what when you reference that as a reason to have to make this investment? Would you expand on that?
It is related to the free speech element. It's called Reed versus the Town of Gilbert in Arizona, and it's a 2015 Supreme Court case, and it changed the way that all sign codes in the entire country can be applied, and it relates to content of the sign. So if you have to read the sign to be able to determine how to regulate it, that would be an inappropriate regulation in the sign code. So for example, if you had to look at the sign and read it to determine that it was a church sign versus a commercial business, that would be inappropriate. And most sign codes in the country are currently written that way. So what would be appropriate is only time, manner, and I think place. So the duration of the sign, manner being the dimensions of the sign, how it's put together, construction materials, things like that, and then place or the location of the sign. So it's we have all sorts of things in our code, like construction signs, real estate signs. We have different regulations for residential property versus commercial property, and it gets really tricky.
Anyone else? Okay, community development.
This is on page 98. There's been just recently an update working with Gary Becker and how we're going to do Renew Monona. So basically, we were planning, just working with just recently with Gary Becker, that the the TIF should be closed this year, and that we have to file a report with the Department of Revenue, which will be coming here in a couple meetings or so. And then Renew Monona would be in effect for actually 2018. Or is that how that's?
You mean the year that we get the increment?
Yeah.
So we would collect the increment for between December 6th, 2017 and December 5th, 2018.
Yeah.
So in the operating budget, the most substantial change was in the Renew Monona line item. You'll notice we deleted the $25,000 to fund that program because we are getting the increment now from TID 2, and because we want to rewrite that entire program, so we're not going to be opening a round of the program and therefore don't need funding this year. And then the other change is in, I think it's the professional services line item. It increased from $10,000 to $25,000, and that's an additional $15,000 to hire a consultant and to rewrite that entire Renew Monona program based on recommendations from the university.
This is the CDA support staff line, is
Right, that'd be
Is it-
Gary
okay.
Becker.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any questions? Hearing none, I guess you're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the library. Ryan?
That would start on page 109. So this is Ryan's first time, so.
Yeah. And we are only 1 minute behind schedule.
Talk fast. Hello, everyone. So, hopefully I do this right. Looking at 109, the
Revenues.
yeah, we're going up by in taxes $18,201, and looking at which areas we're going up in. Salaries are increased by 4,358. Wages is 4,122. Water and sewer by 900. Building maintenance by 2,500, equipment maintenance by 2,500, and electronic info sources by 600. And those are the increases I'm proposing in the operating budget.
Sorry, what page are we on?
109 and 110.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I,
Yes.
yeah. Do any of you have any questions?
So the salaries are the 1.75, and what they talked about, a couple additional ones, so that was the increase there.
The increases we discussed in closed
Yeah.
session are included in that number.
Everything's all
Correct.
included in here. Yep.
And, well, I was just going to mention like the water, and if I'm missing any details, hopefully Mark can fill them in, but there's a public fire protection charge in the water bills for the mains that go to the hydrant. And that charge was changed, so the rate was increased, and that's why there's that 900.
Is part of this increase because you're expecting a little less from the county as well?
Correct.
Does anyone have any questions for Ryan? I don't think so. I guess not.
We're ahead of schedule.
Thank you.
Well, that throws it off because Jake's not here.
Yeah, we'll have Dan go.
We'll let Dan go.
I'm sure Jake just assumed we'd be behind schedule.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the general. Did you hand that sheet out already?
Yes.
Let me see. Oh, sorry, let me get the page. This first one's going to start on page 49. So this would be the general building. So this would be just the base of City Hall buildings.
Including police and fire, correct?
Yeah, there's a big change from when he went to the, I see it's on your notes. For the general building, if you look at salary lines, there's been a change there, kind of readjusting that based on a future hire and kind of moving in line with what our other current employee that we have for the kind of the same position that works in the parks or the rec department, or community center department, I guess. So that was part of it. That was a change that was made.
Okay. For Alder Moore, I handed out a operational budget highlight sheet. I'll put a copy of that in your City Hall mailbox so you have it for reference. But what I've been asked to do in the past is basically highlight more of our significant increases in the budgets. So on the summary, pretty much anything that was of $1,000 increase or more, I have listed here. So we'll start out with the general buildings and grounds budget. The outside services, the repair and maintenance service account increased by $1,500. That's due to contract increases. The repair and maintenance services account increased by $3,500. That's due to increase in maintenance costs to keep City Hall running, and that also includes the admin wing, PD, and fire. And as far as operating supplies, that account decreased by $2,000. The expenses has been less than the allocated funds, so we cut that back a bit.
And one other thing you'll notice from the committee budget to the proposed budget is gas electric. We did cut that down to $45,000. One of the reasons I passed out kind of the handout the last meeting, what we were saving with Falcon, and we're putting brand new lights in again in that building. So talking to Brad, we do expect some type of savings in there. So we did only drop it down just a couple thousand, but we thought that was a prudent thing to do just based on kind of the trends and what we know is going on with the new lights going in that Brad is projecting. So that was made there.
Does anyone have any questions about this part of Dan's budget?
Okay. As far as,
If they want to hold on one just one second. Page 76, just want to explain this before we start because it'll kind of go in order after this. So page 76 is kind of the recap of his next ones he's going to do, the highway, street administration, shop, building, street maintenance, and forestry. This is kind of the sum of all those. Does not include engineering, which we need to change that title here soon. But you can see the personnel costs from this year to last year, and we can see the non-personnel costs from this year to last year. And the non-personnel one that's a big number we'll talk about later in the forestry, so you'll see what that big difference is. So you can go ahead now.
okay. As far as the highway street administration, there were no significant changes for that budget. Moving on to the shop machinery and buildings account.
Page 78.
The gas and electric utilities I have decreasing by $2,950. There was no planned increase from MG&E for electric in 2018. The water and sewer utilities increases by $1,412. Again, this is for the DPW facility down at Edna Taylor. The garage material and supply account will increase by $2,500, and the repair and maintenance supply account increases by $2,000.
Any questions on these last two?
Just for the sake of a question, have we been over budget in those areas, or are you seeing some projects coming up that
No,
need that little bit of oomph?
Just greater expenses for upkeep in the facility. Going into last year, we had the Tyco fire alarm increase for the cold storage building, so that added the cost to it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Moving on to, engineering, there is no significant increase for that program. Street maintenance and construction. Mark, do you have a page number?
Oh, sorry.
80.
Page 80.
Okay, starting out, fuels and additives, I have decreasing by $3,000. We cut the price that we're expected to pay for diesel and gasoline. I left it high going into 2017, unsure of the market, but it's been pretty stable, so we dropped that down, and we are in line with police and fire and parks. I think we all budgeted the same cost per gallon on gas and diesel. Street supplies increases by $1,000, and the large item here, our snow and ice supply, increases by $11,305. That's based on our current inventory and our planned purchase for 2018.
Any questions? Andrew?
And now is that where like salt or what comes out of that?
The snow and ice supply account is 380 tons of salt that we will purchase off the state account, and the cost per ton is $70.50. We purchase liquid brine from the county, and we allocate $1,000 for that. And I allocate just over $2,000 for 30 additional tons of salt if we need it.
Are we going through some of that Saltwise training?
Our staff has already been there.
Okay.
So we're caught up on that training. I believe it's the same training that they had for last year as well. So
Okay.
just a notice on that snow and ice supply account. That account fluctuates every year depending on the inventory that we leave off with from the previous year. So, and then whatever price per ton that we get from the state. So that's why there's a big increase this year. We didn't have as much of an increase last year. So.
Has the price per ton been pretty stagnant, or does that?
It's actually gone down since last year. But I think the prices shot up in 2009, 2010. They almost doubled. And they've been high ever since. They used to be a rate around $45, $46 a ton. But yeah, they're starting to come back down a little bit.
Any other questions? Andrew?
Sorry, I know you got the email that I was copied on as well about the Saltwise.
Mhm.
And I know sand, I'm sure you've looked into sand and different kind of options as well. I forget if I've heard the answer, I forget what that is, but.
We do not mix sand and salt. That's basically a wasted product in I guess in our minds. When it goes to the spinner and gets on the road, sand is proven to quickly go to the side. So you lose your benefit almost immediately. And then the downside of that as well is it always ends up in your catch basins. So it increases the amount that we have to remove from our catch basins, and it potentially has the ability to go right out to our rivers and lakes. There are some communities that do use it. It probably has more effectiveness once the temperature drops below 15 degrees. We don't use it here. It plugs up the spreaders, or it has more of a chance to plug the spreaders, and it's more of a clump. But I guess that's why we don't use it here. So.
Yeah. I know you've looked into all that, but just to make sure we're using it most efficiently, since we're one of the communities that literally border a large part of the lake.
Right.
I know you've heard that probably before, but
Yep.
just to kind of say it again.
And that's a big issue in our area. The chlorides are starting to show up in our drinking water supplies.
Mm-hmm.
The DNR is asking for testing on that, as well as MMSD. We do a little more anti-icing than what we've done the previous few years.
Is that the brine?
That's where we pre-spray the road.
Okay.
We also pre-spray the salt, which helps us put less salt down on the road because it pre-activates. It starts the chemical reaction. So once moisture hits the salt, it instantly starts heating up, and all of our trucks are outfitted with the pre-wetting application as well.
Gotcha.
So
Thanks.
Anything else?
Mary?
Yes?
Or Nancy? So I guess I would just want to echo, I believe it was Andrew that just raised the question about the mix that we're using, and I appreciate Dan's response. I just, I think it's something that we just have to be really aware of and sensitive to, and I just know, I can just speak from my own experience, having grown up in the state of Maine, which outlawed using salts. When I was a child, the state of Maine uses nothing but sand, so I certainly can appreciate the downside of sand as well, but I think it is applied and has been applied in numerous lousy winter environments with some success. So I would just ask that we continue to be, on top of the research there to do the best that we can.
Yep, I'm not arguing against that fact. There are a lot of municipalities, not only Wisconsin, but across the upper United States that do use a sand salt mix. If it's the desire of council for us to use that in the future, we can, but our other costs will increase with that as well. So,
Okay. Next.
Page 88 is your forestry, right?
yeah, going to forestry, there's no
Page-
increase for road-related facilities.
Page 88 is forestry. Just so you know, there's going to be, he'll talk about the gypsy moth, which is 25,000. But just like the sign consultant, this is part of the fund balance applied amount. So the 25 plus the 15 is part of what we applied for fund balance. So that is part of that. It's not part of the levy.
Okay, for forestry, the major increase that we have here, it's a cost that's divided among two accounts. It's the brush pickup. We have a total increase of $1,380. 690 of that is in forestry. The other 690 is in the stormwater utility. As of right now, we've been made aware that our contractor no longer wishes to complete the curbside program unless there's some changes that are made. One of the changes that we will make going into next year is we're going to implement a sign up to have your brush chipped. We have a lot of issues where the contractor has already gone past the house, and then there's a conflict with people saying he missed the brush, and the contractor stating it wasn't out because they record the addresses. So then there's conflict there. So we're going to advertise that people have to notify us. We'll work with Leah and set up a notice on the website. We're going to set up an email, but they're going to have to sign up to get brush collected. That way we eliminate that conflict. And we have probably almost 24 of those issues every year for brush chipping. The other issue that the contractor has is some of the sizes of the piles get to be very large. The intent of the program is to chip tree branches, general tree trimming. What we're seeing is a lot of tree removals. The branches, the canopies from the tree removals is what we're starting to see at the curb, and that's more of an abuse of the program. So we have some discussions that we have to do at Public Works Committee coming up, and then we'll figure that out, put out an RFP, and move on. So that's where that program stands. The other item Mark mentioned, we had $25,000 allocated for gypsy moth spraying. I did drop that down to $14,000. I was under the impression that what I had seen us spend in the past, that was actually the full amount, and then we get reimbursed 50%. I thought that was the half. So we are allocating $14,000 for that. The counts are occurring right now. By the time we vote on the operating budget, we should have an answer as to if we qualify or not for spraying.
So are you saying that you think 14,000 would cover it if we had to pay the whole thing?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So we'd need a budget amendment for that if we do that. Yeah. And
But
the
it's
reason
in here, isn't it?
Huh? No, right now it's 25,000 in there, so we'd have to do
Oh, a budget amendment to drop it 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason why, we're planning on using fund balances, because, you can see 2014, 15, 16, and 17, we haven't used it at all, so it seems like it's maybe once every 5 or 6 years that we qualify for it, so that was the reason why that's kind of a fund balance.
We've been trying to urge people to let City Hall know, because I know there's
Right.
one neighborhood in particular that has major issues
Right.
with gypsy moths, unless we can go out and find evidence of it and prove that it covers a certain area, we're not eligible for the state spraying program.
Right.
So
Yep.
when do you think we should have those numbers?
The contractor is performing the counts now. He started, I think, early last week or late the week before. So he's in the middle of his brush chipping right now and other contract work for us, but I'd have to double check. I think it's next week when the numbers are due to the state, so
Okay.
I should know more next week.
Okay.
Solid waste and disposal, Mark?
Page
number.
Yeah, if you want to go to page 55, we'll start the solid waste. And this would be your garbage pickup.
Okay, for solid waste disposal, this entire program is contract-based with Advanced Disposal. The recycling collection expense will increase by $1,349. The refuse collection expense will increase by $1,722. Our refuse tipping fees will increase by $4,296. Our recycling tipping fees will increase by $1,360. Our recycling revenue rebate is expected to increase by $4,000, and that's based on our current secondary market prices for the recyclables commodities.
And just so they're per contract, so it's not much of a...
What page again?
155. So that's per contracts.
Any questions?
The stormwater would be next, which is, the revenue starts out at 158 and the expenses are on the next page.
Okay, starting off for stormwater, the outside services account decreases by $10,000. We are removing the cleaning and televising work from this account. We had that in this year's current budget, and we did televise the mains that we needed to televise, so we're going to remove that amount from the budget. Our GIS mapping program decreases by $1,740. And the brush pickup, this is the other half of the $1,380. We have $690 increase for this account.
Questions? Brian?
Dan, the televising of the storm mains, is that going to come back, or is it, we just did so much work more recently that we don't need it in 2018?
This was actually the first time in 2017 that we televised storm main. It may come back in the future. I don't see it coming back within the next few years. If we start to see a problem again with the corrugated metal pipes, then we're going to bring it back for more televising. I probably anticipate about once every 4 years trying to get this done.
Anyone else?
Just one last thing in there, because I put these in there for him. Interest income, or interest, on page 159, the interest expense on the debt for stormwater increased about $12,000. And then depreciation, with when you're doing these stormwater projects, you get increasing the value of the stormwater, so you get a higher depreciation expense because the new stuff is coming in higher, and so in the depreciation it's increasing by $10,000.
Okay.
The water utility?
Yeah. So water utility is kind of 163 starts the water utility.
Okay. For the water utility, the power purchase will decrease by $9,000, and that's based on use. Again, there was no rate increase for 2018. The pumping supplies and expense account increases by $2,400, and that's based on an increase in our expense history for the pump house. The maintenance of pumping plant increases by $1,900. Again, that's based on an increase in our expense history. The meters outside services account decreases by $1,000. And our GIS mapping program decreases by $1,740.
Why is the GIS mapping program decreasing? I know that was also the case in the stormwater utility.
Yep, and you'll see it in the sewer again. We brought that function in-house a few years ago. And the first year we did not decrease it at all. Once we made the modifications, got the new software, basically got on the ground and running, we're able to see what our expenses are. So we're slowly decreasing those line items.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just so you know, the revenue side, because I kind of do the revenue side for us. What I've been finding for the revenues is the usage is basically decreasing or staying flat. So, it's one of those things where the revenues are staying this. We had an increase, but the usage now is kind of flattened, or it's actually a little bit decreasing. So we got the increase in expenditures at the same time. So, eventually, I know in the original budget, Dan had proposed adding a extra utility person in here to kind of to do some work in the water utilities, and also kind of help with the kind of like Digger's Hotline. One of the things, just working with Mary, is we just had a rate increase at the beginning of the year, and we can't do another rate increase, a simplified rate increase to 18 months which would be halfway through next year. So the reason why basically we backed it out was thinking, well, let's wait till we kind of have the rate, because our usage is not really increasing, and we kind of want to do the rate increase if we do the simplified rate increase, which is usually between 1% and 3%, and start doing it the simplified rate increase instead of a big full rate increase, and that way we can work that into the new employee if that would actually happen. So that was the rationale behind that at the time. So just want to put that out there.
Anyone?
So for clarification, I remember the discussion around the rate increase and why we decided what we were doing, Mark, to help to make sure people are understanding what we had to do for the rate increase and the simplified versus the other in very simple terms.
Yeah, so the simple rate increases, the PSC just determines, Public Service Commission just says for every community, you can increase your rates by the simplified rate, and nothing to do with their financials or anything. They'll give you like basically it's cost and inflation. So send any community who wants to do that, you can increase it by the cost and inflation. But once you accept that, you can't do another full rate increase till basically a year after that if you do a simplified rate increase. A full-blown one is you basically, what I end up doing is you have to do all the analysis, your uses analysis, your fixed assets, number of meters. It's a whole full-blown thing. It takes a lot of time, and then the PSC people, they'll look at it and they'll audit it, and they'll make their recommendation based on what we have, our numbers and all that stuff, and they'll determine a rate for us. So,
And that's what we went through
yes.
a year ago.
And maybe I think we talked about which way we want to go this way. Do we want to wait every 4 or 5 years and do a large increase, or we just do the small ones to see if that works? So I think maybe we're going to try the smaller ones and see if that will work.
When we were talking about this extra position, we were going to cover some of the costs from these rates, and we thought it would be fairer to take an increase from each of the utilities rather than just two of them. So, and we can't do that until we get this rate increase approved.
It'll be something to think about for next year when it comes back. I assume Dan will bring it back. So the next would be sewer, which is, if any other questions, is on 175.
Okay, just two items for the sewer budget. As pretty much every year that we do this, the MMSD treatment charge, the increase 6.5% for 2018. That covers our treatment charges and any capital expenses that MMSD has at the treatment plant. Our planned expense for 2018 increases up to $772,000. Again, that's a 6.5% planned increase I have for that. And then the mains and outside services account decreases by $20,000. And that's our televising and cleaning account for the sanitary sewer main. Just a note here, since 2014, I think that budget year we were up to $98,000 that we expensed. And we made some changes that you've been made aware of over the past few years by Bill Cole. Assuming we still had that allocation, we would have dropped by nearly $68,000, and that would be just this year alone. We've made decreases every year since then, based on our switch to a different contractor. So that's a pretty good savings that the sewer utility has experienced over the years. So.
I was just going to ask, so the MMSD treatment charge, is that where the I&I research would impact, future funding if we found?
Yep, we're hoping the I&I study finds, I don't want to say a lot of water. I mean, that means we have a lot of problems out there, but we hope to find the sources of our I&I. I have a feeling that there's a good portion of that is coming from sump pump discharges. So we have some work to do in the utility to pinpoint those sources of I&I. But, you know, the district installed new flow meters early last year. So that was the result of the increase last year. And that just carries forward now with the accurate flow meters. So we have had a wetter year this year, and we had a wet year last year above the normal. The average annual precipitation that we have in our area is 36.76 inches. Right now, as of today, we have 36.86 for 2017, and last year we had 45.56. So we are above normal, and that precipitation, finds the weak spots in our sanitary sewer system, and that's what we're trying to find with that I&I study.
Thanks.
So.
Just one thing. So he just talked about the 6.8 increase for MS. We have to pass that on to the customers, so there will be a 6.8% increase to the sewer. Just me and Dan were just talking about this today. Madison Metro we have no say in their increases. They've been roughly between 6%, even up to 12%. And so back in, I think it was around 2010 or 11, I found that we were paying like $480,000 for the MSD, and now we're almost up to $800,000. So in a short time, they've really increased. It's not, some of it's probably the I&I, but not a lot of it's the rate increases we're getting passed along to us without any say, because that comes straight from MSD, and I don't think anybody in the boards, there's no board members.
I think probably about 10% to 12% of our flow, I think, might be I&I. So.
I'm just wondering if we thought about passing that information on to our customers, because that's a significant increase, and I'd like to be able to explain that to people, that it's not just us that are deciding to raise rates.
Sure, we can do something like that.
I think
to get it out there.
a note in the bill would just be nice.
Because we're not increasing our rates or anything that we're doing. I mean, that's not a lot in sewer. The impacting is just purely the pass-on cost that we have no control over.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good idea.
How long ago was that?
I noticed in 2010 or 11 that we're like 400 and some thousand. Now we're almost up to 800,000 we're paying. So, in a short time, it's really. But I think that's when they started doing a lot of their capital stuff too.
They have done a lot of work at the plant. They had to meet regulations. I believe they have a chloride regulation that they have to meet. They have phosphorus that they have to meet. And I think they have a solids requirement. So they've done a lot of upgrades to help meet the permit requirements coming from the state. But I do know there's almost every other treatment plant in Wisconsin has the same type of upgrades that they have to make, but obviously not as expensive as MMSD. The larger plants have more upgrades to make than the smaller plants.
Right.
Dan, do you know when they were looking at the revision of the board makeup for MMSD, and there was the whole discussion on who would make up that board, and I remember there was a discussion about the costs at MMSD as it relates to adaptive management, and basically how does the county want to address this? Do we want to put our money in upstream and deal with the issue there, or do we want to deal with it when it goes to the sewer plant? Is the almost double in this over 6 years related to that discussion at all? Or is it purely just nuts and bolts, like we got to rebuild the buildings and upgrade them?
I'm not sure the requirements of their discharge permit. They have a stormwater obligation as well. I'm not sure if part of adaptive management covers their plant discharge as well as any stormwater requirements they have. I could find that out, though. If any of their capital improvements or how much of it has been to treat phosphorus or remove phosphorus per the state requirements. I can find it out.
Good information, because I know that discussion comes up a lot of how are we investing our money through the county and how that relates to our municipalities. When we had Parisi and staff here just a few weeks back, it's all connected to the same issue.
I'll get you an answer on that.
Perfect, thanks.
Anything else?
Okay, that would be it for me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
So, moving back to Jake.
Only 19 minutes late? No.
Oh,
Father of the year.
Gone for 2 weeks, and I can already see the writing on the wall.
Mayor O'Connor.
Can I ask for a 15-minute break? I am going to get water, though.
Chad.
So is he home yet?
Talk fast,
or
Jake, and you
No.
can be done.
Not yet.
surprised you didn't say you haven't read it yet? You got questions?
So what?
See.
Surprised you haven't said, have you read it? You got questions?
I need copies, probably. We can start with parks.
Talk fast.
I don't really have anything to say.
If you just provided a nice little summary sheet like someone before you did.
He
Jake's
stole
on-
that from me. That's just, that comes in first reading. Can't give everything on the first night.
So page 90 would be the parks. Or, yeah, page 90.
For the
Before
rec-
Jake talks about this, you'll notice the salaries, there's a large increase in there. In the health insurance, part of it, somebody went from single to family. Part of it is, so Jake, currently Jake has been charged only to the community center, rec fund, and pool budgets. And now, since he's spending a lot more time in the parks, it's just reallocating his time, there's no increase. So we put 25% to park, 25% to rec, 25% to community center, and 25% to the pool. And maybe eventually we'll figure out where he's at more, but for now, we're just doing 25 each, so that's the reason why the salaries goes from 51 to 62. It's just reallocating his salaries.
Okay. Nothing really major in the parks budget. We did have a proposal for increasing our athletic field use and preparation fee for soccer and baseball. So the baseball diamond at Huska Park gets a lot of use by outside groups, and we're kind of looking at another partner for spring use of the football field. So with the parks budget, just kind of some 3 long-term issues that we have overall. I think this council has done an excellent job of funding for capital improvements, and we've seen those changes over the last, decade of what we've been able to do to the parks. So that we build it and they will come theory, and they have come. They've come in droves, they've come in masses. If you get a chance to drive by Bridge Road Park tomorrow, the playground will be put up, and it'll again be a lot of people heading to that park. So with that comes the opportunity of and challenge of maintaining everything. So basically 3 big things that we have within the park system is just our staff allocation and retention. I did put it in the notes that we will be asking for a full-time park maintenance staff position in the 2019 operating budget due to the amount of work that we have to do. We rely a lot on seasonals, and this year I was really fortunate. I had a great crew, and we were able to get a lot done. We were able to keep up with mowing operations, shelter cleaning, restroom repairs, whatever we have, athletic field maintenance. This is not always the case. So it is a challenge. It does require me to be out in the field with park maintenance and inspection and repair duties more than I'd like to be. But it's just the reality that we have. Another thing that we've talked about is our equipment storage. So we don't really have a permanent home for much of our equipment. We've increased the amount of equipment that we have for athletic field maintenance, a top dresser, an aerator that we use for turf management. We've created efficiencies by getting a second larger mower. Those 2 mowers can sit in the fire bay garage. Our 3 smaller ones sit outside. And you've probably heard from the fire department on their challenges and issues that we have parking there. So being able to, and all of our trucks that we use for parks maintenance are left outside.
Are those 3 smaller mowers covered at all?
No. In the wintertime, we are able to store them in the cold storage unit down at Public Works.
Okay.
But during the season, they're outside. So as we look at our Winnequa Park master plan, just don't be surprised that you'll see a spot for a parks storage building. Maybe that'll help drive the discussion of what happens with our buildings. Ideally, if the fire station moved, we'd be able to have a perfect setup in those existing bays that are there. That would be my ideal situation. Starting and ending our days from the center of the campus is really important. Before, when seasonals were at Public Works, it takes a long time to get to the north side of the city, especially if you're driving a mower. It's just easier for us to be able to start from the center. So really, our ideal spot as far as operations is from the center. The other one I noted that we'll continue to look at our options is our shoreline management plan. So similar to what we've done with Woodland Park, the Lattice Park improvements have proven to be a wonderful amenity to the community, lots of use, but we have 7,000 plants at that park, including 3 rain gardens that help with stormwater management. Those are not plant them once and be done. These have to be maintained every year. We've got invasive weeds that grow up, so we spent significant more time this year and last year to some extent in pulling weeds and figuring out which are the right weeds to pull and which are the ones to leave. And we'll have the same thing at Schluter Park when that shoreline vegetation establishes. So that's one of those that we operationally, as we look at what do we do ourselves, what can we contract out, those are going to be some of the items that you'll probably see in upcoming budgets on, contracted services type of deal. Otherwise, just minor things in the parks budget. I don't think anything too noteworthy. Largest one is maybe just a park supply increase. As we have Schluter on board, for a full year. Lattice, we have a lot of use, so we go through a lot of trash bags, a lot of toilet paper, a lot of cleaning supplies.
Any questions?
If you want to go to the community center, which is 118. Before Jake gets started, there was a couple changes made from the committee budgets. So there's a part-time wage person he'll talk about. One of the thought process, if he's going to do that, the revenue needed to cover it, so we increased the revenues to cover it. And also the general plant person's salary, we talked about, part of this was allocated to community center too, because he does work in the community center, so I think like 20% was allocated to that department. So there's also the reason why there's a drop from the 74 to the 71. So that was the changes from the committee budget to the mayor's budget.
So with the community center, one of the challenges that we have with our weekend events and having 2 full-time positions kind of do coverage on the weekends is 8 hours in a day with the activities that are needed to be done to get ready in the morning, grounds work. The position that reports to me also has outdoor pool responsibilities in the summertime, and so generally it's a split shift. It's like a 6 to 1 or 6 to 2. Event gets over, and that person comes back. So we don't have a staff person at the community center during events. We've increased the number of events, weekend events that we have at the community center. I think with the population growth in the county, the amount of facilities that do rentals have not risen at the same level or that are affordable. So we're seeing, that June through October basically completely booked with events that we have. So being able to have an LTE that can be the person that where do the lights shut off, where the bathroom needs more toilet paper, whatever it may be, I think would be beneficial to not only the user groups who have a lot of questions when they have events, but also to us as caretakers of the building. That can be a building supervisor, making sure kids aren't running downstairs where they're not supposed to be, and then taking care of any issues and then helping them get out. So the weekend schedule for maintenance at the community center can be a tough one if you come in at 6 or 7 in the morning, have to be back at midnight and then turn around and come back on Sunday morning and get ready for our church group that comes in. So Sundays, we have a church group that's there every single Sunday that they can be throughout the year, and they're generally there by 10 a.m. So anything that doesn't get done, from midnight to 2 a.m., let's say, gets done then that next day. So this position would be there during the event of when people have rented.
And I ask, as with any other new position, ask that Jake come up with the money to cover this $2,600 for this LTE, so that's why he's increased revenue. He's going to bump up the rental fees a little bit to cover that.
Correct.
Can I ask about that? So, Jake, as you just said, we rent out the community center pretty well. And I'm trying to recall because I was chair of the Parks Board for 4 years here previously. I know I always put pressure on us to raise those rates.
Yeah.
So, but when I look at the revenue numbers, our actual revenue in 2015 is almost what we're projecting for 2018. Why can't we expect more?
We're always on a lag because we book over a year out in advance.
Okay.
So we have a lot of events already on the books for 2018 because they can book, 1 year out in advance. So we get their security deposit and then we get the final balance. So as we kind of fill in those spots, they'll be on the new fees. And there's only a certain amount of weekends that we can book that we don't have other commitments. So we host a kids consignment sale twice annually, the Little Badger consignment sale. That's it's a fundraiser really that comes back to the Park and Rec Department. We've got other kind of set events. So there's only a certain amount of weekends, desirable weekends, let's say, that are available. February and March, we don't get much traffic. So I think that's a realistic with the proposal that we'll hear about with the after-school program. We're going to kind of displace a current group that's providing about $1,000 to $1,500 in revenue a year, an ongoing group as well. So that's where we like to be a little bit conservative, just to see where we come in, because we were projecting a little bit of a decrease.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that because when he came to us about the after-school program, there was going to be a $1,000 decrease on there.
Correct.
So that's why he added a little bit of a charge on her, basically like a fee for that person to work there.
I guess what I'm getting at is that, let's say we were raising the fees 5% a year, and demand is such in the county that, we're going to book it solid.
Yeah.
We would expect to see our revenues go up 5% a year as a result of that. Now, obviously, there comes a point where you raise your rates so high that people are going to start to potentially go other places, though.
Yeah.
I think we could agree, based on what you're reporting, that there's no reason to believe that's going to be an issue. I don't want to I don't think that the community center is in danger of becoming too expensive for anyone to use. It's just
this is a trial year. I really want to spend 2018 with some really in-depth analysis on whether or not it's still worthwhile to have weekend events at the community center. We're running probably 75% non-residents that rent the event space. The amount of time to set up decorations, clean up, wear and tear on the building versus the money that we get for it. A couple other places have gone to policies that restrict your typical wedding reception or big family party. For instance, limiting hours till 10 p.m., not allowing booking only 90 days before the event, so you don't have as much time to plan. So when you're looking at an event that we get $500-$600 for example, I think it's a question of, is it worth it for, potential damage to the outside, which we have, the cleanup and repair that we have, the possibility of our full-time staff being reallocated, doing other things either in the grounds or in the parks, given the age of the building, given the amenities that people request and are desired. I think it's one that I want to come back at next year and say, yes, we're going to continue to do this, or here's a proposal, for alternate policies that may lead to more of our Monona community use of the building.
Okay, well, that makes sense to me, and I guess all I would say, and I don't want to get into a
Yeah.
discussion that belongs in your committee, but suffice it to say that a combination of policies and fees, and of course, we always have the right to charge a higher rate to a non-resident than we charge
Which we
to a
do,
resident.
yeah.
We often do that. We could allow all of that together to address those concerns while still recognizing that it's a community center that we're going to keep open and utilize, and therefore we'd like to generate some revenue from its use. Because it would be a big deal to suggest that we not be renting it out at all, because then it's entirely paid for out of the general property taxes. So, I would say let's figure out a way to increase the percentage that we're getting from rental fees where possible. That was
Yeah.
what my comment was.
Yeah, it's more the Saturday night events that we'd be looking at. So it's our Sunday church group accounts for a third of our revenue, and then we have ongoing groups that utilize the building during the day. That's probably another third, and then a third of it is these weekend events. So it just depends on. Stay tuned. We'll have something coming up in the next year, but I do think that as we get more of these on the books, one of the concerns, not only from our end, what we get from feedback, people utilizing the building, from the bar manager and from our full-time staff, is, boy, it'd be nice to have someone in the building during these events.
Okay.
Any other questions? Did you have anything else about community center, Jake?
No.
Do you want to do the rec with the after-school program, or you want to get the pool first?
Whatever makes sense.
Let's just do the rec. Start. So that's page 122. Just so, again, I just want to summarize what happened before the committee budget to the mayor's budget for Jake talks. We had a lot of discussion. He'll talk about the after-school program, and we made him the mayor had him kind of go back and sharpen his pencil and take a deeper look into this program. Their thing is we want to make sure the revenue is going to cover the expenses, which they do. There's a handout in front of you, there's two pieces of paper. One of them has the rec program, the after-school program on there, and Jake will explain that. So that was the theory. We wanted to make sure that the program was going to cover itself. So we went back, we made some changes, and so these are some of the adjustments that basically came from that discussion. And it's basically salaries and revenues were the changes. And I'll let Jake go through that.
Sure. So the rec budget has the biggest change.
Mark, do you have another one of those? Somehow I lost track of mine. I don't know what happened to it, but
You can give that one. That's
thank you.
In discussing the community center and its use, I think one of the biggest advantages that we have is that we can be open to our students at Winnequa School. Discussions with Principal Angie Fassel last year kind of started this desire and demand for an after-school program. Their existing one was full at the school. The projected number of kids for this year was around 600. We've exceeded over 600 kids at Winnequa, which is a bump of over 50 kids in a one-year time. There's going to be another bump next year with the kids that are currently in 4K. So great news about Monona, right? We've got more kids moving into the community. What we've seen in our programs is that it's a lot of dual working parent families. And so when I first started, probably half of our kids that are regular kids in our programs, at least half, were kids with a stay-at-home parent. That has now shifted almost completely to the other end, where the majority of kids that would like to participate have dual working parents, and a care for them right after school is hugely important. I know it is for me as a parent. I was up at for the YMCA program, you had to be online on March 1st, and I was up at midnight to make sure I got a spot. Well, by 7 a.m., that was full, and there was a wait list coming in. And so discussions with parents of existing programs that they might be attending, looking at what can we do and how can we make an after-school program a really amazing part of our community. We've got a beautiful park right here. We have the community center. We have the Dream Park Playground. We can offer things in combination with some of our partners, including All of Leopold Nature Center. We've got a physical literacy campaign, so it's not just a traditional, do your homework and read books and babysit, basically. It would be a comprehensive program that would be an evidence-based program. We're pre-testing kids on physical fitness, nutrition, environmental awareness, going through these programs, and still making it fun. The response from informal and our formal surveys that went out to parents of students at Winnequa were very positive. Registration day included more. We would take up to 40 kids, and I'm very confident we'll fill that and most likely have a waiting list. I think when we talk about utilization of the community center especially, this is a perfect, true community utilization of that space. Also, we have the parks. We're talking about master planning right now for Winnequa Park and the capital budget for next year. All these things kind of come together with, I think, a repurposing of what we do on the rec side. So we can offer a lot of programs. Some are very successful, some are not as successful. We might have ones that have 10, 12 kids in it, or a program like our youth soccer, 130, 140 kids. So I think when we're looking at both a revenue perspective, it would be our single largest program that we would offer as far as the revenue goes from it. But with that comes a lot of coordination, planning, staff direction. And so the projection or the proposal is to take the existing permanent part-time administrative assistant position and elevating that to a full-time after-school special event coordinator position. So that position would go from the 19 hours a week that was basically 2 days a week now, which has been vacant since, I don't know, it's been a while. It's been quite a while. We've had an intern filling in. So 2 days a week in the office, greeting customers, answering phones, doing things that they would need to do. The rest of the time would be coordinating the program that we would have. This position this year would start April 1st. That's kind of how we made the budget numbers work, is that the full-time position would start April 1st, hit the ground running. And then also assist in the summertime. Missy's got her hands full with the pool staff. I've got my hands full with parks and capital projects, and our summer rec programs are kind of, from a supervisory level, we don't really have the ability or the time to spend as much attention that we would like to. So this position would be in charge of all of our summer recreation programs, and then also assist with special events, and come up with new ones, frankly. So we've got some ideas that we would like to do, especially with Schluter Park, now Bridge Road, as Riverfront kind of comes into a clearer focus. We will be planning some events there as well. So this position helps out in a variety of different ways, and they would be extremely busy for a whole year, not just during the school year.
Questions, Brian?
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the numbers right. The 38,246 is for the amount of salary above the current already paid 19 hours a week?
Correct. Yes.
And the 38,246 is only 9 months worth of that ad?
Yeah, so basically we're going to add, his thing's going to start in April, so this is only 9 months that's in the budget, so.
But the revenue is only 5 months for 2018. That's where the challenge is because it's September through December, and so the 2019 budget then would have January through May and September through December. Yeah, so the revenue goes up significantly in the 2019 budget because we're capturing it. It's just the start.
So the 19 hours a week that right now is supposed to be support to help in the office to make sure that you guys aren't kind of needing to be at the office to be able to answer the calls, all
Correct.
those other things. If we've already covered that in the sense of we've supported that because we've said that's an important piece is to make sure that you guys aren't limited by that. If the individual that we're hiring to run an after-school program is not going to be just at that location, they might be out in the community in different locations. They'll have some additional staff, I see.
Correct.
But I'm not sure. I'd want us to think about, are we really talking about a different position and you still need the support in the building?
I think with a third full-time at this, supervisory management level, between the three of us, we'll be able to coordinate that. If, most days you can multitask and get what you need to get done in the office and also plan for your program. If you need, if you need a full day for a conference or training seminar or to go out and meet with partners, then Missy and I fill in. So right now, we sort of do that now. When one of our office assistants has vacation, either Missy or I try to be in, or we have the other person come in. So I think there's room for both because a lot of it's going to be computer work, coming up with lesson plans, emailing out parents. That can be done. In September, I don't want to say is slower. It's slower than June in the office. So if it was June, if it was like the summer month, I would be concerned about it. But given the September through May, we ramp up. April, May is probably going to be the most challenging time, just as we ramp up for summer and we're kind of closing the books on the school year. But the start of it, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Long term, depending on, where we're at with staffing levels in the office, maybe that position is a full-time, administrative assistant position, and then you don't have, but you're still covering. The thing of it is one is fine, but you're always covering for sickness and vacations and whatever it may be. So we all have to be a little bit versed in all the different areas.
Okay. Thanks.
Chad?
So Jake, it seems like, and this may be a follow-up to Brian's question, it seems like when you sharpened your pencil to reduce some cost here, that was all wages. I mean, that was.
Yeah, so we went through basically program by program and analyzed how they were doing. And what I found is that a lot of our adult fitness programs were not breaking even. And so we decreased by eliminating some of our adult fitness programs, which eliminates those wages that we'd have to pay.
Okay.
And so typically we'll budget for revenue at a certain level and wages. Well, when the revenue's here, the wages still stay the same. So
right.
The challenge with some of our fitness classes is we were offering a punch card, which gives the consumer flexibility, but we wouldn't see like our minimum number for, let's say, a boot camp class. But we still ran it because we had all these punch cards floating out there, which caught us in a catch-22. You have to have a variety of offerings to make a punch card worthwhile to buy.
Right.
And so we scrapped that and gone down because as I was running the numbers, I'm like, wow, we're losing a lot. Especially an adult fitness class, should not be subsidized by taxpayers. It should be making money or breaking even. So that's where some of the wages went. The other wages were from the delayed start for the full-time staff person, and then just doing a little more comprehensive review of where we're at. But the big one was the program starting later and then the adult rec.
Okay. Well, I think that answers my concern, because what I was seeing was that, we're adding this program, but it seemed as though we were also, we're still adding a good chunk to what we're asking the property taxpayer to pay for recreation. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I know with some of our programs and parks, I mean, what the property tax payment is just the difference between our expenditures and our revenues. And is that ultimately true with this? Because it,
Yeah. Just in that plug number.
because I couldn't get the math to work out that way on some of the other line items. Like when I look back at 2015, it looks like, there's less than a $20,000 difference between, there is a difference between what our expenses are and our revenues are.
Yeah, we took losses in 15. That's what that is.
Okay. So I guess it just, the property tax number goes down if we're making money. Is that right?
Yeah.
Correct.
It doesn't go up when we're losing. It's just like a hidden extra cost there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say, I don't know if you're kind of trying to figure out some of the numbers here. The rec department program fees, if you take the 114, you minus basically the 60,000 out, you'll get like $59,000 in revenue. So what the budget, if you didn't have the after school program, the 65,000 for rec program fees it went down by $6,000. So that's some of your decreases too.
Okay.
Yeah. Decrease, but
Yep. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yep, it's the rec budget is the most challenging because it's dealing with some unknowns, especially concessions at the Warming House Lagoon and Lots Park are two in the last couple of years where, I probably overestimated what I thought we'd bring in revenue, and we have set expense. So every time that we're open at Lotus Park, whether we sell one hot dog or 100, we're still paying the same fee.
Right.
And same with the Warming House. When we're there to be open to rent skates and have concessions, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Now, if it's really bad weather, we don't open. But those are two smaller instances of it's more cumulative over. All right, I budget for a class to bring in $1,000 and it brings in $800. Well, it's still enough to break even or pay for the instructor, but it's not to where I budget for. And we're also looking at these, summer, especially the competition that we have within ourselves from swim lessons, from summer school, from Monona Swim and Dive. There's a lot of different opportunities for kids to do. And the challenge is that we can't put together at this point a full day program that would allow for the dual working parent to participate in. So we're going to try a few different things. We're going to try programs that are on Sunday afternoons for kids, programs that are on evenings, so we can reach a broader base of children in the summertime as far as youth rec.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. And so let me just say to summarize, because your answer really helped me sort out some statistics that I wanted to share with my colleagues here. So, well, first off, as you noted, you have really reduced your expected adult program fee revenue projection. And in total, in 2015, the taxpayers contributed $55,000 roughly to the recreation program. That went up to $73,000 in 2016, and we're projecting it to be $79,000 in 2017. And what I'm doing is I'm adding the over budget amount to the budgeted property tax amount, which I think, Mark, you can confirm for me that's accurate, right? If we're over budget $20,000 in
it comes out of fund balance. It doesn't actually. So when you come at, so you're saying, I think I maybe misspoke. So you're saying like 2015 at 179 and 193.
Yeah. So there's 14,000.
Actually, whatever's left, because we can't rebudget it. I mean, we can't.
Yep.
It would come out of our existing fund balance.
Understood.
Which has come from the general.
Right.
General fund property tax.
But as a practical matter, so that means the property taxpayers have paid for that.
Yeah.
Right. So so I think it's instructive at budget time to look at what those actual numbers are. You know, what is the cost to the taxpayer? And then when we look at the proposed budget, that number, you know, it's in balance when you look at the budget. The expenses equal the revenue. And so the general property tax number, which is the first line item in the entire budget, that number is the one that's generated by the difference between budgeted revenues and budgeted expenses. You know, so that's literally the number that is populating in the spreadsheet. And then to the extent that we are over budget or under budget, the cost to the taxpayer either goes up or comes down. So the good news is that for the last 2 years, we were expecting to be, we have been in the $73,000 to $79,000 range, and this budget brings that down to 64. And I do think you're making some conservative assumptions, and you know, as you've pointed out, you've learned from some programs that weren't quite doing what you had expected, and you've made those adjustments. And I commend you for this after-school program. I mean, I think it's exactly the sort of thing that our Parks and Rec program should be doing. On top of all the things we do for our older population and for everyone in between. Yeah. But I think that's the right direction. And so, anyway, that was a very long-winded observation, but thank you for hearing me out.
Anyone else? Guess we're good. So what?
Cool.
Pool is 133.
All right, so this is the year. If you don't like a lot of traffic and commotion, I suggest you take a vacation at the end of July. We are hosting the All-City Swim Meet in 2018. So that is probably the biggest effect on the pool budget. You will have between first reading and second reading a facility use agreement with Monona Swim and Dive that we should have a recommendation from Parks Board for approval that will account for some of those lost revenue opportunities at the outdoor pool. We also have park shelters and community center rentals, etc., that will be in there as well. So that's a big change in the pool. You'll see increases in some areas, decreases in the other. The patch sales, which season pass, eventually we'll be able to change that. But we no longer give out a patch if you buy a season pass. This goes back probably
They were cool.
30 years or whatever.
You collect the colors.
Line
They're
items
awesome.
in the budget. I would say kudos to this board and our park board for making the change on hours. The proof is in the pudding. We increased our open swim hours and we increased season pass sales. It's there. It's been there the last 2 years. So we're confident raising that number up. Even though the pool will be closed for a week, you'll be able to go to any other pool that's in the all-city program during that time period. So I still think it's a tremendous value. We did not increase the fees this year, so it's still going to be a really good value for families. Daily admissions went down. Typically, we're at like a 90 to 95 day season, so we normally got to bring $600-700 a day in admissions and average that out. So all these decreases are based on not being open to the general public. And then where you see the kind of coming back is in the pool rental section, where that increases the difference between what this facility use agreement with Swim and Dive Club would be.
Is that due to the event, or is
correct?
Okay.
Yeah, so that would include all their fees, park and rec related, and we set that out as the opportunity cost for concessions and admissions and not being able to rent out shelters or pool parties, et cetera, and then we have a little bit of a decrease in our staff costs. We don't need as many lifeguards on know, during the swim years we would with open swim. But all those have been taken into consideration.
Just to make sure I'm reading this right, so when you're talking about decreases, you're not talking about what you had originally budgeted for 2017, but you're talking about what the year-end estimate is. That would be a decrease, right? Because if you look at the budget, you're actually increasing your revenue quite a bit. Or I shouldn't say quite a bit, $5,000. But
Yeah, and a big chunk of that is the season pass sales, and then that pool rental. We would seen a bigger increase in revenues without the swim meet. Well, I won't say that. It'd probably be about right in line there because we're closing that gap of what I would anticipate for revenues.
Yeah, I'll just be interested to watch that because I don't think patch sales will go down as much as we might anticipate. But
No, we have them going up. We have from 61 to 50. Yeah,
from
right.
2017
Yes.
budget, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I would hope, but I'd like to have a budget that's more conservative, and
Oh, no, it makes sense.
under-promise and over-deliver than
I was just making sure
over-promise and under.
when you talk about decreasing,
Yeah.
we're not talking about what you have budgeted
Correct.
last year
Correct.
to this year, but what we actually got. Yeah.
But the year end for 2017 is not going to be up at 61 because you're not going to be selling any more patch sales between now and January 1st.
No, that's it.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
that number, most of
it's
all these are.
49,000. It's not going to be the 61.
No,
That's-
That was
that's
at the
June.
end of June.
Well, I know, but
yeah.
your year-end estimate is not going to project up. You're not
More
going to
than-
continue to sell any.
No,
Yeah, the 61 is pretty close to what we have given.
the year-end estimate line is pretty accurate
Pretty
for
accurate.
all
For
the
your
revenue
end of year?
for end of year.
Because, I mean, I
'Cause-
update these based on like whatever.
Oh, I do that. Yeah, we work on it together, and it goes in. And
It's
by
pretty-
the time you get this, all of our revenues are in because it's by Labor Day.
That's my point of year-end estimates. Mark, you don't have one formula set for all of those to take whatever the rate is right now and project it out?
No, but the 61 is based, I just took.
That's
what I had,
actuals,
the
yeah.
Actuals, these are actually pretty much actuals based on, because it has his, what's that system?
ActiveNet. We have our software system that
And
we
they
pick.
track everything, so by the time I had put these numbers in there, the last piece I updated based on his ActiveNet numbers. So these are,
Because, and just to clear, because I think what you're getting at is that, by June 30th, you would think most people might have already bought their season pass, and yet, that's kind of the beginning. I bet a lot of people buy them early in July, or they hit the books in July, basically.
I had the same discussion with Jay, because I was like, why are people still buying passes in July? Some even August.
Nice. Yeah.
But he gives them a cheaper rate, right? After a certain.
Yeah, but there's
It's prorated.
There's always a lag, though, between Mark's
Well,
software system and my software system, because I get a check like 2 weeks later from all the credit card sales like 2 weeks ago. So really that June 30th is most likely like up through June 15th. So then if you were to say true June 30th, and I could run those numbers, that number is probably like 58,000 in season pass sales. We do sell most of our season passes by June 30th.
So in general, and this has nothing to do with this item now, this one's more for Mark and how to read this line. Because in
Well, this was a little
other
bit diff-
departments,
The
for
other
example.
departments I stretch out for the 12 months. This
Okay.
one's just based on, I know, because it's basically closed the building down, the pool down in
Yeah.
August. And so I would know what the final numbers are based on August, like other stuff for like MG&E and other stuff like that. That are all projected based on certain type of commission I would have based on a full year.
Okay, so each individual line, you have that formula built different.
Yes, yeah, I do. So a lot of them I'll go through and make sure it makes sense based on my current numbers too. So I'll change the formula based on whatever I know the current situation is.
But to be clear, there really isn't a formula being applied to the pool, because
Right.
by the time this budget
Right,
goes
so this
to
is-
press, we know what our,
Yeah.
it's estimated, but it's, because it's obviously like a round number, but.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this one's pretty close because it's right at that time.
Yeah, it's probably the most accurate one of mine
Of all
anyway,
the
because
budgets,
I
yeah, it's
have
probably closest.
all the revenue in by budget time, and I have a good chunk of the expenses, and then just take from see where we're at. It's painstaking. the preparation. More for Mark than me. But
So if you look at concession expenses,
Yeah. That's
do you
pretty
see
close.
my issue here? So that, you're
18,000?
saying, is going to double because there's a half a year left compared to the first number.
Well, again, with the concession is, when you say June 30th, we don't get bills like 30 days later, so he might have bought a ton of stuff at the beginning of the year in early June, but we don't get billed on those until like July. And by the time he turns his in, it could be August. So,
But, I mean, that
So I
leads
know
you to
the-
believe that you're projecting for an additional 6 months.
well, no, yeah, but this is just, it's kind of.
no, just think of the 2017 year-end estimate as actuals, because we've gone through line by line on everything that we can, and said at this point now, that's where we're at. After all the season is over, all the bills have been paid. That's where we're at.
Because year end is essentially like mid-September. or
Yeah, my
something,
year end
right?
is Labor Day, and then I try to get all of the bills paid by the middle of the month. It's the 6/30 is really tricky for the pool because we have a lag between our system and his system, and then bills that are coming in and out. So
Well, it's right. It's basically, it's literally a third of the season has gone by.
By the time
but-
we do this, whole season's almost gone by.
No, I know that it's, the important thing was just said, which is that the year-end estimated is pretty much what it's going to be when we look at this packet next year.
Yes.
Like, those numbers will vary by a couple of percentage points, and that's it. I
Right.
mean, it'll essentially be within 1,000 or 2 of the numbers you see here at bottom line. And so that means we budgeted a general tax revenue of 91.8, and in reality, it's going to be 82,000 because the pool did better this year than the budgets.
Yeah.
I do want to point that out. Like, we were expecting to subsidize the pool more than we did.
correct. It was a great year.
And the 630 numbers are uniquely misleading for this particular thing because it's 3 months out of the year and it hits right in the middle of it. So it's just like a chaos number. It's like me analyzing a project in the middle of the project. It's like, what does that tell you? Not a lot.
Yeah, and it probably, what I'm trying to figure out in my head probably has less to do with the pool and more to do with other items of when I look at how to read that line of the estimate compared to budget and how it's being projected
Yeah, most of them are projected, aren't
or stretched for the 12.
12. This one was just unique because we
Yeah.
had, by the time I do the budget and put it together, we know very close what the final numbers are going to be. We still pay some salaries, we'll still have a couple odds and ends stuff here, but basically by end of August, early September, I know all the revenue numbers and basically 90% of the non-payroll stuff. And I do know the payroll stuff too, because we get the final payroll numbers before we're done with the part-time number 107. That's an actual number, so that's
Mm-hmm.
in the 130202. Those are actual final numbers for the year for those two, because we don't have any more expenses on those by the time I put this together.
Correct.
Anything else? Just for your information, Nancy has had to drop off to go to another meeting, so she'll watch the rest on YouTube. Is there anything else, Jake? Or is that?
No, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in and
Yes.
explaining all this.
Is it on time?
Yeah.
Confused. I was like, did I come in late?
We run a tight ship here. All right, I guess next up is Joan.
Yes. Jones on page 31 and page 32 for election.
Thanks.
Oh, you
Oh, you have an intro? Okay. I just want to point out in the clerk's office, really the only change of any substantial amount is professional development. That's because of the deputy clerk. She needs to be trained. She'll be going to the Green Bay Institute starting next year for her first of 3 to 4 years of training. She'll be certified as a clerk after 3 years, and then the 4th year is a completion that she'll learn treasurer, the treasurer portion of the job. So that's all that is really a major change. Supplies did go down somewhat, office supplies. That isn't just for my department, that's for the entire city. And we just estimated it a little lower.
Yeah, and just like step on the supplies. I don't know if the rest of the council knows that Aline basically orders all of our supplies with us for the city, and she takes a hard look at it and gets the best prices. But we also have a contract that we do for our paper. We work with the school district, Monona School District, so we get a cheaper price. We kind of order in bulk together with them, so we get a cheaper price for our paper. So that's been a noticeable savings too, working with them, and just in general with the. We'll notice even more now with the with not printing many packets out, but definitely. We done stuff like print on front and back, stuff like that. So we are looking ways to save costs on that. So, we did reduce it down to 68. Probably could have been reduced a little bit lower, but we definitely are looking at office supplies and making sure we're doing the right thing on that.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Taking minutes and reporting is not easy. I guess that's really the only change. Everything else is pretty level. Elections, moving on to elections.
Page 32.
Okay.
Before we move on to that, the purchasing thing that was discussed in capital of the purchasing plan.
Sustainable purchasing.
Do we anticipate a major impact in supplies?
I personally don't think it'd be. I mean, we're gonna have an impact on it, but Aline does a very good job of finding sales. I mean, we have probably 15 different kinds of pens because she'll find sales. I mean, they all work. Pen's pen. So
True accountant speaking, because that purchasing plan won't go necessarily after the sale of a pen as a pen as a pen.
Right.
It will be a different type of analysis to determine how we make purchases, and it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time.
And you're talking about sustainable practices. We have, like, as Mark said, we're trying to always print everything dual-sided now. Our copier is preset to that. It's the default. So there's that, and the paper is always recyclable paper, always
Post-consumer.
Post-consumer. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we make an effort, but, we're going to generate paper. There's really nothing we can do about it. And you can't get rid of all of it. And our pens, too, I mean, plastics, we do our best. But, there's not, some things you just can't reduce. We have to use it, so. But we aren't wasteful with it. Everybody's aware, not printing a bunch of stuff that you're not going to use.
And I think that purchasing plan was not necessarily on the use side, although those are like wonderful efforts and we need to continue that, but it was also on that purchase side of what are we choosing and why are we choosing to purchase that item versus a different item. The use side is absolutely that's our easiest changed behavior, right, of hopefully being able to make impact. So I just look forward to see how that shakes out.
Yeah.
And I would think some of these things we're going to have to look at on a case-by-case basis, too. If something is sustainable, but it costs 4 times as much, well, I think we have to make some decisions.
You better tell Chad to plug his ears.
Yeah.
Well, so we talk about, paper that is recycled content. I mean, that paper is more expensive than just virgin forest paper, which is, on the face of it, ridiculous, but that is currently the way that commodity is priced. But, as the mayor said, you weigh that, is it worth maybe spending 20% more? Probably is. And then, but is it worth twice as much?
And
You know.
remember, we're not paying full market price for that too, because we are working with the school district. So
Right.
we have the contract together with the school district. So we are getting better prices on those too.
Right, right.
Somebody normally would go buy it. So we are looking ways like that too. I mean, the school district is willing to work with us. So it worked perfect.
We all do have recycled bags under our desks, so our pure paper trash does get recycled also. So I mean, we're both as users trying to be aware. So we do our best for that. Elections. Mark has always felt it was smart to keep the election salaries level because we would have to fluctuate them so greatly from one year to the next because there's 2 elections one year and 4 elections another year. They flip. And then one year we had 6. So there's no way to determine, salaries. And also I wanted to point out, though, that off and on there's talk about raising minimum wage, and we are required by law to pay minimum wage. Right now it's $7.25, but an increase in salary would generate an increase in this salary because we pay minimum wage. Many other communities pay a lot more than that, and I haven't lost any workers, but they can work anywhere in the county now. The law was changed. They don't have to be a resident of our city to work here, nor do they have to be a resident of a different city to work there. So as long as they're in Dane County, they can work anywhere. So I haven't lost anybody for the competitiveness, but we might have to look at that at some point also. So far, it's not been an issue. So there really isn't any changes again in election. Everything has been covered. And you can see, looking at the actuals, how it fluctuates. The salaries in 2014 compared to 15. And then 16 was even bigger because presidential is way more work. We do pre-processing. And then it goes way back down for this year, 17. So you see how it goes back and forth. Apparently 15 was a boring year. So nothing happened in 15. So that's it. I don't have any big reports. I don't get to buy any big things or do anything exciting.
Other than new machines once in a while.
Once in a while, yeah. It's all statutory, so there's really...
Every election is exciting.
Right. For us it is.
For us it is, yeah. They are exciting. But
Does anyone have any other questions? Andrew?
Joan, real quick, do you know generally what others pay? Maybe what's the high end? And what?
It fluctuates quite a bit, but I would say the average is around $10 to $12, and a high end would be $20 for a chief. We do pay $1 extra for a chief. But they do, things vary. We provide a meal for each of our shifts. We have split shifts, which is nice, a benefit for our people because it's a 13-hour day. That's a really long day for somebody to work the entire time.
Doesn't Madison, don't they work the entire day
Yeah,
in Madison?
Madison, yep. And it's more than 13 hours. The polls are open 13, but you do have to be there, of course, longer. And then many communities have their election inspectors set up the polling places. We do that for them. So there's various differences across the communities. So I feel like us providing a meal sort of compensates a little bit for our lack of wage. And then, of course, my dream in life is to have a polling place attached to the city, to City Hall. Because many communities have that, which is just about the most awesome thing ever. I did look into a couple of years ago having one polling place, and that didn't fly. So I'm hoping that when we talk about a restructuring of the campus, that polling place will be up there in the list of things that we need to accommodate. So it would be nice even just to have it as a city facility rather than we're using a church, which I've only had one person ever complain about that church-state separation, but they could vote absentee if it really bothered them. So haven't had a problem, and the church has been wonderful to us, so. So, that's it. But yeah, the wages kind of, they go very, we are pretty much, we're low.
Well, they would have to pay minimum wage, right? So we would be the
Yes.
lowest.
Well, I don't know if everybody follows the
Oh, really?
rule exactly.
We could put on a
so-
tip jar.
Yeah.
Some communities can volunteer,
Yeah,
Some communities have
God.
volunteers.
have volunteers.
And some people do
Yeah.
not take pay either.
right. We do have some, I give the option on the sign-up sheet always is volunteer. This year, in addition to the 4 elections, there's also a 3-hour training requirement for election inspectors every 2 years, and that's for this next election cycle. So I do need to pay everybody to come to training or watch a DVD of me performing, and so they.
They should be paying you.
That's right. I think so too, but they won't listen. So it's. That's another cost, but it's part of the process. So,
Any other questions? I'm going to take a break here till 7:30. That's okay.
Sure.
Mayor needs to get up and walk around.
The mayor said, we do.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So,
Explain something
I'm
before
gonna
I
be
start. There's a sheet that you can kind of got in front of you. It looks like this.
Awesome.
This sheet you got, it's from the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, and they do a report every year. And I took this report, shows what the cost is per capita, and I just put it in there because I just to kind of show what it is. Like for cost per capita, for like the general government, which would be like, my department, anything outside of police and fire and public works. We're $87 per capita. Bellevue is the highest, 128, but the average is like right around 79. So we're a little above the average. Public works, we're at 100. The average is 95. Police or fire and EMS. That's a little misleading because you see a lot of low numbers and high numbers. Part of the low numbers, like Stoughton, they have in like Wanakee, DeForest, they have like different districts. So I don't think they don't include. They don't know if when the Taxpayers Alliance they included all that in there. So I think that's what the big difference is when you see 100 compared to 48. I think it's the different districts they're not including. But police is the big one. We're the highest in the county for police per capita for police. So with that, so just something that came out of Taxpayer Alliance.
And when did you say this was from?
This is a little old data. This is 2015. So when I get to 2016, I can update it. They got a new book coming out.
Okay.
I think probably within the next 6 months.
But it should be
I
comparable.
don't
probably.
imagine it's going to be much of a difference one way or the other. So I'll first start with kind of the revenues. We kind of hit on those.
Could I, before you move on, I'm sorry, I just want to ask, is Sun Prairie then the most, well, Belleville obviously is the leader, but for general government, is that literally just general government, or is that
It's like your
in total?
no, they don't include in total. They have another one. Doesn't include like your debt service and stuff like that. So it includes in the book it says includes general government would be your clerk, treasurer, city administrator,
Okay.
lawyers,
library?
your attorney fees and stuff like that. Library's not included. They didn't do one for library for
Okay.
some reason.
Is it parks?
Parks is not in there either.
Okay.
So that includes, so there's some things that are not all included in there, but
Okay.
it's basically, they take the same exact thing from each municipality,
Right.
but it's not all inclusive.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
So page 13 is kind of the revenues. The big thing, when you look at the taxes, when we started out, we were at 2,944,131, and we, after a bunch of adjustments and changes, we got down to $2.8 million when we met with the mayor. But kind of things that kind of increased from last year, tax from city-owned utilities. This is what our water utility pays the city. So they basically get a tax bill, and it's based on all the entities and all the other tax agencies. So as you can see, 2015 to 2016, it really jumped, and that was a result of the referendum with the school. So we're going to be right around 310. So that's a $20,000 increase there in the budget. Intergovernment revenues, fire insurance. I know Scott kind of talked about this. This is kind of going up, so we increased it from 42 when we first started up to 47. Underneath that, public safety aid. This is the grants we get with Wally with the different OWI grants and seatbelt grants. So we go from 25 to 50 just to receive a lot more grants, and the expense went up basically the same dollar amount, so there's no effect there. And this one, the transportation aid, this was when we first started this, so this is the old book, I guess. When we first started transportation aid, and then I talked about this when we did the presentation, is last year was 755, and now I projected to go down to full 10%. But the state basically put another 10% into the actual pot of money, and unfortunately the budget number just came out right when we were basically printing the books, so we didn't have time to change after the books are printed actually and sent out to everyone. So that number is actually 750. I think it's 754,000. So that was a huge increase. But as you can see, we went from 2016 to 839. We lost a full 10%, and I was projecting because based on the current data we had, and we were losing one of our highest years, and even last year I think we could have went down 17%, but we only allowed to go down 10%. So that's where I got that's why I used the 679, the full 10%. But with the state putting an extra 10% into that big pot of money, that made it all the difference in the world. Exempt computer aid. We projected 400,000 when we first started. Then we got a letter from the state. I got a letter from the state. Is how they changed this process. Usually, we would get it used to be a formula driven. So each community, each business would turn in what their computer aid is, and then there was a formula, and it would determine how much aid we get. The state changed that, so now there's just a multiplier. So they took last year's number, which is ended up getting 397,000, and they added a multiplier to get to the 403,000. So that's going to increase every year by a multiplier, which to me I think is a good idea, because if you look at 2014, it was 319, and one year was 426, but then it was 370 and 397. It's really based on WPS. WPS, it depends when they buy their equipment a lot of times, or whoever larger people use their computer equipments, networks. If it's based on depreciation amount, so if they're depreciating their computer stuff, the lower amount we get. So when they buy a lot of stuff, they get a higher amount. So it was kind of fluctuating, and this I think actually works out the best for us. We kind of have a stable number that's just not going to go up and down every year. So now the new number is 403,540. License and permits, we dropped it from 100 in total, from 156,000 down to 140,000. Big thing is the permits went from building permits from 50 to 41, electrical from 20 to 16, plumbing 14 to 11, 13 to 11. There's where the biggest changes, decreases were. When I did the year-end estimates, these numbers are actually kind of low. They're closer now to I'm thinking around the 40 for building permits. We just got our two highest months for some odd reason. October is going to be our highest month, and September was probably the second highest month. So I don't know if there's nothing big, like no big business. It was just a lot of people pulling permits. So I think we'll probably do okay at the end of the year. But we are decreasing that amount. Just in total, it's been down the last couple of years. Fines and forfeitures under court penalties and cost. This undebated could even probably increase it a little bit more, but we left it at 175. We increased it to 175 one, because of the current trends a little bit, and then I don't know if you remember when we talked about the judicial budgets. There's a software, even when they're purchasing a software as part of the capital too, that they can work with the state and they can collect the money quicker. They basically take it out of people's bank accounts. The state does all the work, and we'll get the money. We are getting the money quicker, and now Toya, our court clerk, she can go back and for like past stuff, previous years. So we're expecting we're probably going to increase this. 175 is probably going to be, it's a conservative number, but we don't know yet until we get the system up and running. But I think for the future, that's actually going to be probably maybe 180 in the future, but for now, increase it to 175.
Jed?
Before we turn the page, I just want to ask about bicycle licenses.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered about this because I do remember years ago when the brief years that I lived in Madison here, I had a bicycle license, and I'm looking at these revenue numbers and I'm realizing I'm not the only person in Monona that hasn't come in to get my bicycle license.
Right.
How much do those cost, and how might we legitimately increase, the number of people that get them? Because
Yeah, I don't know if
Are they-
They're $3.
$3. Okay, so we're basically saying that there are 17 bicycles in Monona.
and that's 17. It's once you get a license, well, it's
16,
permanent.
two-thirds.
So
Oh, it's a one-time.
it's a one-time fee.
Oh,
So-
okay.
But people
Alright.
get new bikes. There's a lot of people we know that don't have licenses, but the problem is I don't think our police department is going to enforce it. So,
Okay.
I mean, they should be checked by the police, but they're not enforcing it. It's
I
really
was
if you
just-
get your bike stolen if you don't have a license.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I was thinking, and
Marketing.
Where do you
Yeah.
take it?
all right.
We
That's a
might
different
want to do a
question.
promo on WVMO or something next spring
Okay.
about, and mentioning the idea that if it gets stolen, this is how they can track it. If
Right.
they find it,
Right.
And it has helped for some people who have had their bikes stolen. I know.
Well, and to say that it only costs $3 and it's a one-time expense, but that, the fine, and I'm making this up, right? But I mean, if we made a fine of $50 to not have it.
There is a fine, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we just reenacted those, and I'm not remembering.
I'll take a look at
Okay.
It'd be in the fee schedule if you could look it up.
it. Yeah, I'll look at that.
Yeah. Okay.
Mary?
Mary.
oh, I'm sorry.
Mark, do you know, will the permits for the riverfront property be pulled in 2018 for at least phase one?
Yeah, that's why I kind of increased it. I had dropped it down to 35 to 41 in some of those. It could be, they probably will have some type of permit pulled. Probably could increase it a little bit for it. But it's over different phases. So there's they were supposed to pull some this year. It looks like it's going to be delayed just recently. So it's an area if you're looking to increase. I mean, I think it probably would increase a little bit because of that.
I would say they definitely should be pulling some.
Yeah. If you go to page 14, public charges for service, it did decrease for the school officer. You can see it went from 77 to 68. The reason why we have a new school officer, and the school officer was there before, was married, and the new one is single, and that's really because we pay for part of the health insurance, and that's really the difference for that reason. Miscellaneous revenue. Interest income. At the time, I project to be about 90,000. It's probably going to be closer to 100, maybe 110. So we'd increase it to 90 or 95. And I think it's probably a good number because we are using some of our balances. Some of our TIF balances we'll start using. So, and some of our other balances that are coming down a little bit. So I don't think it's going to be much more than 95 unless the rates keep on going up and up. So that's an increase from 50 to 95. It's a little bit, lease payments, why is it going down from 60 to 58? And why? So basically, we lost the lease on the tower, and we do get money from ATC, So ATC goes to power lines, and so they pay us, they have a payment with us that they pay over 20 years, and what their payment is reduced each year to eventually become zero. So that takes all in consideration. So we should be right around 258,000 based on the current numbers I have. And then transfers from other funds. So what that is, and varies, is basically we charge other funds that are separate from the general fund for kind of accounting services, admin services, us paying the bills. So that's in some like for water and sewer utilities. We consider we rent space for the billing clerk to be in the city hall. So that's kind of what these are. They're basically paying us for those type of services, and that's when you see transfers. That's what's made up. It's just not a fictitious number, but that's it's a number that is for charges we are charging these other funds for. And then the fund balance, the 43,500 again is the 15,000 for the sign, 25,000 for the gypsy moss. Dan talked about reducing, so reduce that too. And then we have 3,500 for the specialized training for the IT that we put in for one time. So that's basically all the expenditure or the revenues.
Any questions, Brian?
Mark, the line item for donation and contributions, the 40,000.
Yeah.
It says per agreement, and is that regarding the Walmart agreement?
Yes, that's Walmart.
And so, going backwards, 2014, 15, 16, and year to date, it appears as if that has come true.
Well, they pay every year. They send us a check right away at the beginning of the year.
But that ends a couple of years, doesn't it?
5 more years. I think.
Oh, 5 more? I thought it was less than that.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, were there any other pieces to that contract?
10,000 goes to transit committee.
And that
10,000.
also expires?
That will expire too in, I think, 4 or 5 years. I don't remember the exact dates. But yeah, it does expire pretty soon.
Okay.
That's part of that. So it was agreement that was part of this to talk about what the assessment should be too. So in that agreement, it talked about the 50,000. So it's a total of the 40 and the 10 to 50,000. They had to pay over so many years. So it's in that agreement, and they're paying based on that. And then there's a portion that relates to the assessment, that the assessment can't be lower than, I don't remember offhand, but I know it's right around 18 million.
Yeah,
or
I think
so.
that's what you said.
So we have that agreement, and that's a thing I know Bill is using for the case. Does it hold up in the court? We'll find out. But, so.
Anything else? Okay, Mark. Continue.
The other one would be finance. Which is page 29. So in this the finance budget, basically everything is kind of salaried. The big change is my year-end estimate is off. It should be closer to, it should be around 16,000 to 18,000 for accounting services. So basically, we used to have 2 sets of auditors. One set of auditors that audited the water, sewer, and stormwater, and then we had another set that audited just the general fund. We've done it since I was in here, so about 12 years we've been doing that. And we looked at just kind of combining and going with Shank. And they're cheaper. But what I've found is we used to have a lot of problems because we have some stuff we have to file with the disclosures for debt and some other stuff that we have to file, and it all comes from the audit. The two are not really working well together because they, the competing firms that kind of don't like each other. So there was problems. We decided just to go to one. And they're cheaper once they combined them, they're cheaper on the general fund side of what they're charging us. So they are going to charge us, $18,000 instead of the, the $22,000 they had been charging us. So there is a savings there with that. Now once they do combine them, they don't have to do as much testing because it's all combined for one. So they're overlapping with the testing what the utility auditor's done, and this way they can combine them so it's a cheaper route.
Any questions?
So debt service is page 145. This one did go up. This is the debt service that went up. We are using fund balance. So basically, the 400,000 fund balance is basically, a lot of it's accumulation of, when we had special assessments, we would pay off so much per year. And we would budget it was about 50,000 or so that we're budgeting per year. Special assessments, can't see 2003 and below, but we're receiving up to like 150,000. People wanted to pay off their special assessment early because I think a lot of them would either go to the bank and get cheaper interest rate, or they just had cash on hand. So I'd been saving that until kind of building this up, because these are basically what was used to pay some of the debt we're paying down. So we're using the 400,000 there to pay that, which is what we have. We have that amount of money, more than that in our fund balance for that. So there is an increase, as you can see, in the debt payments overall.
Any questions?
Mark,
Andrew?
well, just refresh our memory on how the general property taxes fit into this page here.
Well, this is exempt from the property tax levy, so so it is increasing. So your property taxes went from I think we're up to 300,000 basically, an overall increase. In the
Right.
levy. The portion is exempt from the levy limit, so that portion is exempt. So if it goes back to page, if you have in front, if you go to page page 3, you can see the general debt service levy and the library levy. So it is a decrease of about 270,000, or increase of 270,000. So that's all exempt from the levy limit.
Didn't you have a new page for that?
Yeah, you don't have any current books. I don't know if you handed them out.
Oh, is that what you provided last time?
Yeah. So in case you didn't have it. That wouldn't have changed that number.
That wouldn't have changed, okay.
No. Does that answer your question?
Well, where is this number on page 3? Is it that first number at the top?
On page 3, so if you go down to the, in that box, there says general debt service. You see that? Under total expenses, total and city property tax levy, and then general debt service. So that's on page 3 in the.
Oh, wait.
That's the 2,490,000.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Andrew?
I might be confusing the capital budget in this, but are we projected the debt service would increase? I forget which side of the budget I was on. But isn't there in 2019, isn't it supposed to dramatically increase as well?
2019, we will have an increase. So the 2018 borrowing won't affect until 2019.
Yeah.
Time you make your first principal and interest payment. It is projected to go up, I think about 150 to 200,000. But we do have money in the fund balance to eat a lot of that increase up.
Okay.
Because I projected to use some of this fund balance so it's not high of a thing. Then it's going to then it's going to drop after that year. It'll start to come down again.
Okay.
Unless we have a huge borrowing, then it, double what we usually borrow, then it would be an issue of not coming down.
Anyone else?
Well, so
Jeff?
just to put this into perspective for all of us, because I always have to wrap my head around this, this is kind of like we're talking about our mortgage, essentially, and our second mortgage as a city. So if we put the city's expenses into the perspective of a individual taxpayer, you've got all of your monthly expenses, and a big chunk of those are, if you're a homeowner, probably your mortgage. And so in effect, that's kind of what this is, right? It's the city, it's all those things, our buildings and
Right.
equipment and all that other capital stuff that we borrow for,
Yeah,
just like a homeowner borrows for their home and maybe a car.
right.
And so that debt service is a big chunk of our expenses, and then there's all that other stuff like your utility bills and all that is the operating budget.
Yeah,
But debt service, which is the cost of the debt, that shows up as an operating expense. We passed a capital budget to borrow money. Then we end up incurring an annual cost, and that's what this is.
yeah. Yeah, and really, if you look, this is probably stuff that happened 7, 8 years ago, which would be like Monona Drive. A lot of this stuff now, we're finishing up paying on Monona Drive, finishing up on, a lot of, things like that. But a lot of it would be, this is still Monona Drive stuff that you're kind of paying off.
Right.
Those are not TIF related Monona Drive stuff.
Right.
Anything else? Now we're at the TIFs, Mark, is that?
Yeah, if you go page 148. So basically TIFs, we don't really have much activity in the TIFs. The TIF 4 is Monona Drive. So TIF 4 is Monona Drive.
Sorry, what page?
148. So just the increment number is based on a formula, and that comes directly from, want to know where these numbers come from. So if you TIF increment, you see the 305,996. Hopefully that's in there, right? That comes from page 6. Go to page 6. It's a whole formula-driven thing. So these are the increments. So this is the TIF calculation. It's what everybody does in the state, determine what the increment for TIFs are. So this will all relate to one. So if you look at this, so the increment, TIF 2 dropped a little bit. We were in 17, we were 1.6, we're down to 1,462,000. So there was a little bit of a decrease. TIF 4.
What's TIF 2 again?
TIF 2 is Pier 37 area.
Okay.
And that's the one we're getting ready to retire.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so at 1.4 or 1.7, it's coming on to the tax roll here really quick. Or basically the 60 million in value is coming on to the tax roll. TIF 4, which is, that's Monona Drive, did increase a little bit in the increment. So we are increasing that, and it will increase even more in 19 once we get the subtraction. We just did a subtraction amendment that was approved, so that number will jump up even higher. Same with TIF 5. TIF 5 is Garden Circle, so Heritage area, MSP. That we had some decrease in value. That's why that number's gone down in increment. TIF 6 is you see that one down. That is a result of Menards contesting their assessment here just recently.
Menards? I'm sorry,
Menards.
Menards, okay.
So it does, we look at when we talk about Walmart and other stuff, it does have like the other, effect. Menards didn't go to court, but they had their assessors had changed it based on whatever, I don't know what they use as their documentation. But that is really the result of the change, majority of the change in the Menards reassessment. TIF 7, we are doing another subtraction there too. That is Fairway Glen. And TIF 8 is increasing, and that is Tresta. So, that increased a little bit. And that's a rolling number, so any changes that we get will increase this up or down. The more you add into the property tax, the higher this number comes. It is affected by the school taxes, it's affected by the county taxes. So I only projected those right now to be 2 or 3% increases. If they're a lot higher than that, these numbers will change. So it is a rolling number based on those factors.
Brian?
Mark, is this increment value here not taking into account the expenses in each of these TIFs?
This is just what we get for the increment. So the expenses, I'll show you when we could talk about those.
So just for example, TIF 2, the 60 million,
Yeah,
that's not counting
that's
what
just
we
pure.
spent.
That's just the pure revenue number coming in. So it's not subtractive of any other.
Looks really good, but we need to see the other side.
Right.
Anything else, Jim?
Are all the TIF numbers like consolidated somewhere in our packet, or, because isn't that,
We do have it on page 148. They're not consolidated. We have each fund for each one has a fund.
on what page?
148 kind of starts TIF 4.
Okay,
So TIF 4, that's where the increment number, that 305. So these are the numbers. So TIF 4, I don't know if you're aware of, is ones we've been donating to. So TIF 2 has been the donor district, TIF 4 and 5.
right.
As you can see, the transfer from TIF, one year is 171, 157, 307.
Oh, right.
And 822. So that's what's been transferred in. This year we don't get anything. 18, there's no more donor district from TIF 2. But our principal, we have a fund balance probably about $2 million. So we just did some restructuring of the TIF 4 debt just recently, the one we just passed. So it's 840 number I think will change now. But so we are paying $1 million in debt. We're only getting $306,000 in increment, and a lot of the other stuff is coming from the transferred money we received, $2 million. So TIF 4 is the one we were kind of struggling with, and that's why
Right.
we did these. Added 3 years on. TIF 5 is MSP again, at Garden Circle.
Right.
Same situation. They had the transfers in too, in the 338, and then the interest and debt payments. TIF 6, this will be a donor district. This will eventually donate money here pretty soon. Well, if you guys approve it. Eventually. It's funny because this started off at 700,000, 712,000, and then the assessments have kind of changed with Menards and others, and then 15 and 16 the MATC tax rate change that affected the TIFs too. So we're up to 712 now. We're at 604 for TIF 6, which TIF 6 is fine. They'll have plenty of money to donate, depending on how we do it. But they, this year they're positive. They're, 606,000 and expenses of 550. TIF 7, they basically break even, depending on the year. This year it went down again from 121. This is where you subtracted the bank on TIF 7 by the Fairway Glen area. So that number, 104, will increase next year probably to 150, I think, in 2019, just based on the numbers. But that's a break even. Last year we had money to the, so that TIF is doing well. TIF 8, which is Fairway Glen, which is, 152. As you can see, the total increments almost 500,000, and we're paying 164,000 expenses.
Is TIF 8 Trace-Star or Fairway Glen?
Did I say Trace? It's Trace, I'm sorry. That's probably the next best TIF we have, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that building, keeps on trucking along, because it's, that'd be an early payback if we want to close it early, or we can use it as a donor district, but right now we're on target to pay back within 8 to 10 years.
Isn't it doing well?
Yeah, it is. It's doing. I don't know if financially if they're
Right. I mean, I think,
It's
aren't
doing
they?
well as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, occupancy is good.
I think I heard like 85% or something
Yeah.
occupancy there.
But
Until they argue for an assessment that says that they're vacant.
But there is a,
And it's gonna happen.
there is an issue because they're on Realtor.com. Somebody's trying to sell 50%. so
Yeah, we're not sure which one that is.
We don't know
but-
what that is yet.
What now?
One of the partners is trying to sell her half
Oh.
of Trey stuff, but we're not sure which
I don't know if it's
partner, right?
overall what that, if it's an issue with
Huh.
the place or not, if it's just somebody trying to get out.
Right.
I know one of them is interested in doing some development in Middleton, so that may be.
So, knock on wood, that, if it keeps on, I mean, that's a very, very good TIF. TIF 9 is the current riverfront, so these are some of the best estimates. These numbers will be changing throughout the next year based on what we'll get. So, right now, there's no increment coming in. As you know, we're redetermining the base, so that's going to help in the future. I don't know if anybody has questions on TIFs.
Anyone?
I have Parkland Fund is also on here. It's on page 154, the next page. So right now there's really zero in the Parkland Dedication Fund. So I don't know if everybody knows what this is. When you put in a new place comes in and they have a resident, they have to pay a Parkland fee. So it's like, I was going to say, I think it's right around $1,200 per unit. So we haven't really had any units that met that requirement since 2015.
Is that Fairway Glen?
Fairway Glen, I think, is that. And we had some else with the other apartment down the street.
What was Trace?
Well, Traced was tied directly to the park next to it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
And that'll be similar to Riverfront, so.
yeah.
So we transferred some of that money to, so we trade, actually, that might be Fairway Glen or Trace in 2015, actually. That would make more sense. So that was transferred to pay for Lottis Park at the time. And we had some money left over. I think that to-date numbers actually should be zero. It might have been left in there from last year, and we didn't zero that out. So there's no money coming in right now. I didn't budget any money for Riverfront, but we will have money eventually coming in for Riverfront. We don't get the money to the final occupancy license or permit is issued. So depending when that permit would be issued, probably not likely until end of 18, maybe 19. And they can only be used for capital items, or not capital, park items, for structures. Like we've used them in the past for, I know we used them for Winnequa down here. I think when Rob was the mayor. I don't know. But I know we use them for other areas. We don't have any balance because we basically zero them out with other capital activities. But it will be something to think about here in the future. The last one is transits. And I'm going to apologize to the transit people here. This was never really, I guess, officially approved because every time we're supposed to have a meeting, we had a committee of the whole. So this has not been officially approved, but this is just based on it tied right to their contract and then the same amount for the advertising promotion. So everything is exactly the same as it was for last year. And the state aid is based on what the expenses are.
Andrew?
Chad, I was actually interested, or maybe anybody might know, how successful was the free ride week? That was.
I haven't got official numbers back yet, but from according to the seniors and some people who wrote it and other people, it sounds like it went really well.
Good.
Will they keep on doing it? I know the seniors really took advantage of it more than the other riders, but just in general, the number of rides or people using it has increased. I know at one time we were down to like 16. Now I believe we're up to like 23. And the buses only hold so many. It might sound like a small amount, but the buses only hold so many. So, that we've been putting a lot of effort into it, and it has, there was kind of a low point, and now we're at the highest ever, as far as ridership right now, especially for the Express.
I see the bike racks being used, which is nice.
Yeah, have we found out about the bike rack yet?
He said they were, I did talk to him. He said they were fine.
They are legal, okay.
They weren't legal because
That was a concern.
it's a long story.
Yeah.
We'll save it for after.
They put the bike rack not knowing if it was going to pass because the state troopers have to pass it, I guess.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
that's all I
That's
have.
everything? Anybody have any other questions about any of this?
I know we got a couple amendments so far. I know we got the addition of the firefighter. We have the one tonight already for the gypsy moth. I saw. And then we'll have the transit will be updated, and then transportation aid, I mean. And then I believe we'll talk to that later. I think Andrew has another one for proposing. So
Do we have a revised number based on, I mean,
with the transportation aid,
yeah,
I handed out last, but I can hand. I'll resend it to everybody.
the one
It's
that we got last time?
105,000, right?
Yeah.
That's available, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
It's 105,000, but now
Okay,
there's
I
an
have that from
additional,
myself.
well, you'll have a motion for the
Yeah.
gypsy moth. That's
So that's just
another
one fund
11.
balance through that.
Yeah. Oh, that's true, that was fund balance. yeah.
So I'll resend it in case it doesn't have it. But if you could have the budget amendments or whatever, at least for the first run, by next Wednesday, which I believe is November 1st. That's possible.
Yeah, first read will be at our November 6th meeting. Andrew?
So the tax bill examples that you provide, that's an amount that has us not using the 105,000.
That's just adding that transportation aid number back in
Okay.
as is.
So if we use the 105, the taxes would go up.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
very elementary question, but
It basically come back to what's in the budget now if you use the majority of it. I mean,
okay. Okay.
Depends where you look at it.
Gotcha.
Well,
Any-
and then could
Jen?
you clarify where we're at with the fund balance?
Yeah, it should be on. I don't know.
I'm sure it's in the packet here, but I
It's
just
on the
noticed.
front page,
Yeah.
down there under working capital percentages, is that it?
Yeah.
Estimated fund balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I circled it here.
Yeah, I can-
So the amount available to use is what, 314, about 315,000?
Probably, I'm trying to.
And that's to put us at the target of 20%.
That's put you at just at 20.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, that's kind of like we talked about last, it's kind of a rolling number too. So once you put the fire number in there, it's going to fluctuate a little because it's 20% of next year's budget is what you.
Right, got
So
it.
there is a little
Yep.
bit of fluctuation.
Well, yeah. But what would if we hit our, so here's, if we transferred that entire 314, into, if we decided to use it to apply against expenses this year, in other words, to bring ourselves down to roughly 20%, wouldn't we then be quite a bit or that's independent for how much we're allowed to spend?
No, if you put 314 in, you're going to be, it's going to affect your, depends what you use it for. If you use it for something that's like debt service, then it's going to be, doesn't matter because it's not, go against the levy limit. But if you use it for just the operating portion of it, then it's going to change your increase number and it's going to affect, it's going to
Should lower
affect the
the
formula.
taxes.
It's going to lower your taxes, but it's going to affect the formula for your
Right.
levy limit. So it's depends what.
But the levy limit, though, will still essentially be in effect. We couldn't.
You
What
go-
I'm getting at is, right now we have 105,000 that we could spend for
Right.
services that we could identify we want to have,
Right,
and then we also have 314,000 that we could apply.
right.
But that we couldn't therefore add $400,000 in expenses, and I'm just speaking hypothetically. But
Right, you could, theoretically.
We
yeah.
could, but the thing is that
next
300
year.
and whatever of that is not ongoing to next year.
Right,
Right.
right. And I realize,
Right.
absolutely, and that's a very real, and so that's not a sustainable choice. I mean, obviously, if it were a one-time expense or something, that,
Right.
Yeah,
but,
in theory, you're correct.
yeah, okay.
Will that affect the amount of our levy limit increase would be allowed next year then, though, if we cut our spending this year quite a bit? Because is that based on sort of
You can carry a lot of that over.
You can carry it over?
Yeah, there's different formulas and stuff like that, and how you structure it. So you'd get that money back.
Okay.
You wouldn't lose it.
But eventually, it hurts you.
Right, because because you still have to fill that gap then. But yeah,
I mean, we definitely have a situation, and I mean, we all know, and obviously, we can't have everything we want to have,
right.
but we have a demand for services that exceeds what we're allowed to pay.
Right.
So it's hard to provide fewer services than what we're allowed to provide, given the, you know.
My one suggestion would be, if you're thinking about a public safety building, you might want that extra money, because there's probably a lot of stuff that we're going to encounter that we might not budget for, that first year. So you're going to want some fund balance then that
That's
first
a good
year.
point.
If you're doing a public safety building, there's
Right.
probably going to be some pros and cons of using that there. I think
Purchase of a property or something.
Right. I mean, if it depending what year we build it and when it's done, and if you didn't levy for all the amount for the maintenance of the building, things like that, you're going to want to take it out of fund balance for that first year until you can put it into the levy type situation. So something to think about.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, and I'm just throwing out numbers here, but let's say that we go through our amendment process and we find that we, collectively want to add $150,000 of expenses to this year's budget. That's $45,000 over the current limit.
Right.
So we would then theoretically we could just borrow the 45, or take 45,000 of fund balance and apply it.
You could balance it.
Right.
Right.
And then that would be it. So we'd be maximizing our fund balance retention,
Right.
and we'd be hitting pretty close to our limit for
Right.
for property tax, or
But the year after is where you'd be the $45,000 in the hole, because you'd
Yeah.
start.
right, understood. But
Yeah.
of course,
Right.
with the fund balances we have,
Right. You have to adjust.
that's debatable, right? Because
Right.
they're,
So
we
yeah,
could
I mean,
have-
that's definitely a way to. I mean, there's.
Or some years we've used it to pay off some debt too,
Yeah.
haven't we?
correct.
Yeah. I mean, there's things in there, you just kind of going through, we mentioned, the riverfront for a couple of bucks for the permits. I mean, there's little things, I guess, if you're looking at little things they had too. I'm sure, probably could have went a little conservative based on, riverfront, all those projects do happen.
Right.
That number would probably be a little bit higher.
Right.
The court thing comes in better than expected, that might be a couple bucks there too. So, I mean, there is little things too, it probably could have been this year, but kind of held off a little bit, not knowing until we kind of get some better numbers in. But
Well, I mean, year after year, this city, to your credit and others involved, I mean, to the whole city staff collectively, we consistently come in under budget
We do.
as a city.
we
And
do.
probably a chunk of that is due to every year people leave and their positions don't get filled right away, like the library director. That was
sure.
a couple months worth of a fairly decent salary.
Firefighter.
Yeah.
Firefighter, yeah.
Yep.
The halftime assistant
Yeah.
at Park
Definitely
and
that.
Rec, that,
I think one issue would be that, and then sometimes we got a lot, building permits one year was, we got a lot more than we budgeted for, and we were only paying so much for Marty, and now
Right.
that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, next year
Even
we
with
don't know
Riverfront, I
what
think
to
it
be
depends
paying
where
for
we
that.
at. We can, I guess, increase it, depends what we do with that. If we go contract, we'd pay 90% of our revenue. Something like,
Yep.
one of our old contract was we had contracted services with
Right.
independent. I think we paid 80 or 90% of our revenue went to them, so we kept 20 or 10%. So
Right.
if we do that same route, if we increase permits, I guess we're not really keeping much of it.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so and that will have some effect.
Sure. But I guess the point I'm making is just to, as we think about this, this document that we have here is a really thoughtfully prepared document, you know, and the mayor's work and your ongoing, you know, management of this. I just want to say that, you know, it took me a long time to wrap my head around a lot of the complexity of this, but now that I understand 90% of it, I have the added benefit of feeling confidence in the quality of the information that's in here. And that's, you know, that makes this a lot easier because I'm not worried about there being glaring omissions or, you know, that you're putting on your rose-colored glasses to make this look better than it is going to turn out.
Yeah. Our biggest area of always concern to me has always been the rec department, because that's
Right.
rec and pool and community center, because you never know. I mean, that's really...
It's dependent on weather and all kinds
There's
of
so many
stuff.
variables in that, but most of the other stuff is, we've done it so many years and kind of down, even the expenses, we're really good at where we're at and stuff
Right.
like that. But the revenue side is the biggest variable, I guess, of the whole budget, if you ask me, is those funds.
Okay.
But yeah,
Great.
you're correct with your balancing the way, I mean, that's the way of doing it, with the 45, whatever you were talking about. There's a lot of options.
Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned until 6, and